The alarm system had not sounded in 3,000 years. When it began its shrill warning, Hyun nearly fell from his observation chair. His hands moved across the control panel with practiced speed, pulling up data streams that made his blood run cold. The monitoring station floated in the darkness between stars, invisible to any scanner humanity possessed. For 12,000 years, Hyun's people had watched Earth from this hidden place. They called themselves the Architects, and they were old, beyond human comprehension. 4 million years of history lay behind them. 4 million years of careful planning and controlled development. Hyun stared at the numbers on his screen and checked them again. There had to be an error. Humans had just launched a ship that traveled faster than light. According to every projection, every model, every calculation his people had made, this should not happen for another 847 years. "Mireille," he called out, his voice tight with concern. "Come look at this." Mireille arrived within moments, her tall frame casting shadows across the observation deck. She had been monitoring Earth's communications, listening to the chaos of human voices as they celebrated their achievement. Now, she stood beside Hyun and watched the data scroll past. "They did it," she whispered. "They actually did it. They should not have done it." Hyun replied. "Not yet. Not for centuries." Mireille pulled up historical records with a gesture. Images of Earth's past appeared in the air before them. Steam engines giving way to combustion engines. Propeller planes becoming jets. Computers the size of rooms shrinking to fit in human pockets. The timeline of human progress looked like a graph gone mad, climbing steeper and steeper with each passing decade. "Look at this pattern," Mireille said, pointing to the data. "From their first powered flight to landing on their moon. 66 years. From basic computers to artificial intelligence. 40 years. From discovering nuclear power to fusion reactors. 90 years. They are speeding up." Hyun had seen this data before, but now it carried new weight. Every other species the architects had observed followed predictable paths. Technology advanced in steady increments. There were formulas, equations that described how civilizations grew. The architects had perfected these formulas over millions of years. They knew exactly how long it took a species to move from fire to spaceflight, from the wheel to the warp drive. Humans broke every formula. "We need to call a council," Hyun said. "This changes everything." The council chamber filled within the hour. 12 of the architects' wisest leaders gathered, their expressions grave. Commander Ji-won stood at the head of the assembly, her presence commanding respect. She had led the architects through countless decisions, always choosing the path of caution and control. "The humans have achieved faster than light travel," Ji-won announced. "This is 8 centuries ahead of schedule. We must discuss intervention." An elder named Tae-young spoke up. "Our laws are clear. We do not interfere with species that have not reached spaceflight capability. But now, the humans have exceeded that threshold. They are a spacefaring civilization. Then our laws must change," Ji-won replied sharply. "The humans are dangerous. They advance too quickly. They will destroy themselves. Or worse, they will threaten others." Hyun stood to speak. "With respect, Commander, we have no evidence that humans are destructive. Yes, they have wars. Yes, they have made mistakes. But they have also shown remarkable ability to recover and adapt. That is precisely what makes them dangerous," Ji-won countered. "They adapt too well. They learn too fast. Look at their history. They went from splitting the atom to nearly destroying their world in decades. They survived by pure chance, not wisdom," Mireille added her voice. "But they did survive, and they learned. Their global conflicts decreased after they developed nuclear weapons. They created international laws, cooperation treaties. They grew from the experience." Ji-won's expression hardened. "And what happens when they make a mistake with technology we cannot even imagine? What happens when their rapid advancement leads them to discoveries that took us millions of years to handle safely? They will stumble into powers they cannot control. The council debated for hours. Some agreed with Jiwon, seeing humanity as a chaos that needed containment. Others sided with Hyun, arguing that humanity's unique path might teach the architects something new. The galaxy had become stagnant under architect guidance. Every civilization followed the same slow, safe road to advancement. Finally, Jiwon called for order. We will observe them closely. If they take one more leap beyond acceptable parameters, we will make contact. We will offer guidance. If they refuse, we will enforce quarantine. What defines the next leap? Hyun asked. Dimensional physics, Jiwon replied. If they begin researching dimensional manipulation, we intervene immediately. That technology nearly destroyed us 4 million years ago. We cannot allow another species to make the same mistake. The council adjourned, but Hyun remained at his station, watching Earth's data streams. He saw the humans celebrating, saw their joy at reaching the stars. They had no idea they were being watched. They had no idea that ancient eyes saw them as a threat. One data point caught his attention. A human research facility had just published a paper on theoretical dimensional mechanics. It was crude, barely scratching the surface of the concept. But it was there. Hyun's hand hovered over the alert button. If he reported this, the architects would move immediately. First contact would happen not as a greeting, but as a warning. Perhaps as a threat. He thought about the humans he had watched for so long. Their music, their art, their endless curiosity. They were loud and chaotic and unpredictable. They fought and loved and dreamed with an intensity the architects had forgotten long ago. Hyun pressed the button. Within days, the architect fleet began its journey toward human space. The age of observation was ending. The age of intervention was beginning. And neither humans nor architects could predict where it would lead. The colony on Kepler 442b had been humanity's pride for 2 years. They called it New Sol, a settlement of 15,000 people living under protective domes on a world 12 light-years from Earth. Captain Do-yoon commanded the small defense fleet orbiting the planet. 3 ships designed more for asteroid deflection than warfare. When the sensors detected incoming vessels, Do-yoon thought it was a drill. Then he saw the size readings, and his heart stopped. "Sir, we have 15 objects approaching," his sensor officer reported. "They are massive. Each one is larger than our entire fleet combined." Do-yoon stared at the display. The objects moved with purpose, dropping out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. They were not asteroids. They were not human. They were ships, and they were here. "Sound the alert," Do-yoon ordered, keeping his voice steady. "Get me a line to Governor Sun-hee. And someone wake up Earth. Tell them we are not alone." On the planet's surface, Sun-hee received the news in her office. She had been reviewing agriculture reports when her assistant burst through the door, face pale. Now she stood on the observation platform, watching the alien vessels take position in orbit. They did not fire. They did not communicate. They simply waited, like judges preparing to deliver a verdict. The communication came 3 hours later, transmitted on every frequency simultaneously. A voice spoke in perfect Korean, then English, then Mandarin, cycling through every human language. "People of Earth, we are the architects. We have observed your species for 12,000 years. We come now to offer guidance. Your advancement has exceeded safe parameters. You must accept our help, or face containment." Do-yoon's hands gripped his command chair. "Containment? That sounds like a threat." One, the alien voice continued. "We do not wish conflict. We wish to protect you from yourselves. Civilizations that advance too rapidly face destruction. We have seen this pattern across millions of years. Trust our experience. Accept our guidance." Sun-hee activated her communication link to the fleet. "Captain Do-yoon, do not take any aggressive action. I am going to respond." She took a breath and spoke into the transmitter. "This is Governor Sun-hee of New Seoul Colony. We receive your message. We request a meeting to discuss your proposal. Send a representative to the surface. The alien ships remained silent for 10 minutes. Then, one of them began descending toward the planet. It was enormous, blocking out the sun as it approached the landing zone outside the colony. The vessel touched down with surprising gentleness for something so large. A ramp extended, and 3 figures emerged. They were tall, perhaps 8 feet in height, with elongated limbs and skin that shimmered like oil on water. They wore no protective suits, adapting instantly to the planet's atmosphere. The lead figure stepped forward. I am Mireille, speaker for the architects. We meet you in peace, but with urgency. Soon he had prepared a conference room in the colony's administration building. She sat across from Mireille, with Doyun and 2 advisors flanking her. The architect folded her long body into a chair designed for humans, making it look like a child's furniture. You said we are advancing too fast, Sunhee began. Explain what that means. Mireille's eyes, large and dark, fixed on the governor. Your species achieved faster than light, travel 800 years ahead of the projected timeline. This is unprecedented. In our experience, species that develop too quickly lack the wisdom to handle their own power. They destroy themselves with weapons they should never have built. They tear reality apart with experiments they do not understand. We have survived this long, Doyun said, his tone defensive. We have not destroyed ourselves. By accident, not design, Mireille replied. You came within years of nuclear extinction in the 20th century. You nearly collapsed your ecosystem in the 21st. You survived through luck, not planning. Sunhee leaned forward. But we did survive. And we learned from those experiences. Does that count? For nothing. It counts for recklessness, Mireille said. You are children playing with fire. We offer you the wisdom of age. Accept technological limits. Allow us to guide your research. Grow at a pace that ensures survival. You mean grow at the pace you decide, Sunhee observed. There was something in Mireille's voice, a tension that suggested this was not a simple offer of help. Why are you really here? What are you afraid of? Why are you really here? Why are you really here? Why are you really? Why are you really here? Why are you really here? What to be really? Mireille's expression shifted, just slightly. It was the first crack in her diplomatic facade. We are not afraid. We are cautious. Those are different things, Sunhee pressed. Caution is wanting to help. Fear is needing to control. Which is this? Before Mireille could answer, Doyun's communicator buzzed. He glanced at it. Then his eyes widened. Governor, I am receiving a priority message from Earth. Dr. Taejin, from the Advanced Research Institute. He says it is urgent. Sunhee nodded, and Doyun activated the holographic display. A tired-looking man in his 40s appeared, surrounded by equations and data screens. Governor Sunhee, Captain Doyun. I hope this message reaches you. I have been studying the alien transmission. More importantly, I have been studying us. I think I know why they are here. Taejin pulled up a complex graph. Human neural plasticity exceeds any other known species by orders of magnitude. Our brains rewire themselves constantly. Combined with our genetic diversity and cultural variation, we do not just learn, we evolve. Every generation compounds knowledge in ways that defy standard biological models. He switched to another display showing acceleration curves. We are not just advancing fast. We are advancing faster over time. The rate of our progress is itself increasing. If this pattern continues, we will reach technological singularity within 2 centuries. We will achieve in that time what took other species millions of years. Sunhee looked at Mireille. The architect's face had gone rigid. You already knew this, the governor said slowly. That is why you are here. Mireille stood abruptly. You must stop. Research into dimensional physics ends immediately. If you continue on this path, you will trigger catastrophe. We cannot allow it. Cannot allow it? Doyun repeated, rising as well. You do not control us. We control this region of space. Mireille replied, her voice cold now. Accept our guidance, or your expansion ends here. You will remain in your current systems. You will submit your research for approval. You will slow down. Sun-hee remained seated, her expression calm, but her mind racing. And if we refuse? Mireille walked to the window, looking up at the architect ships in orbit. Then we will enforce quarantine. You will not leave your current territory. Your ships will be turned back. Your colonies will be isolated. You will grow slowly, safely, under our observation. The words hung in the air like a prison sentence. Doyun's hand moved toward his sidearm, but Sun-hee caught his eye and shook her head. Violence would accomplish nothing here. We need time to consider, Sun-hee said. Give us 1 week. Mireille turned back to them. You have 3 days. Then, we require your answer. The architects returned to their ship, leaving humanity to face an impossible choice. Accept eternal guardianship, or fight for freedom against an enemy 4 million years their senior. 2 years had passed since the architects delivered their ultimatum. Humanity had refused to submit, and the consequences had been immediate. Architect vessels now surrounded every human colony, forming an invisible cage. Any ship that tried to push beyond established boundaries was turned back by warning shots. Not destructive, but clear. The message was simple. Stay in your box. On Earth. Dr. Taejin worked in a research facility buried 3 miles beneath the Pacific Ocean. The location was chosen for secrecy and shielding. If the architects were monitoring human communications, this lab was designed to be invisible. Around him worked a team of the brightest minds humanity could gather. Ha-jin, a theoretical physicist who dreamed in mathematics. Yuna, an engineer who could build anything she could imagine. They were building humanity's escape route. The dimensional fold theory is sound, Ha-jin said, her eyes red from lack of sleep. Space is not a single layer. It is stacked like sheets of paper. If we can slip between the sheets, we can travel without moving through normal space at all. Taejin studied the models floating above the workbench. And the architects would not see us coming. We would not be expanding in their space. We would be expanding in parallel space. Ender. Yuna was already assembling the prototype drive. Her hands moved with practiced precision, connecting components that humans had invented just months ago. The power requirements are massive. We will need a fusion core just to test it. Then we build a fusion core, Taejin said. We have come this far. We cannot stop now. But the architects were watching closer than anyone knew. In orbit around Earth, Hyun monitored energy signatures from his stealth ship. He saw the power spike from the Pacific region, and his blood ran cold. The humans were building something big, something that consumed energy like a star. He reported to Commander Jiwon immediately. They are not stopping. Whatever they are building, it requires more power than their largest cities combined. Jiwon's response was immediate. Then we show them why they should fear us. Prepare the reality shaper weapon. We will give them a demonstration, Hyun protested. Commander, the demonstration protocol was meant to be our last option. If we use the reality shaper, we reveal technology we have kept hidden for millions of years. They leave us no choice, Jiwon replied. If fear will not stop them, perhaps understanding the gulf between us will. The architect fleet moved to the Tau Ceti system, where an uninhabited moon orbited a gas giant. Human colonies in the system received a message: evacuate to minimum safe distance. Something was about to happen. Doyun watched from his flagship as the architect vessel approached the moon. It was a small thing, barely 1,000 kilometers in diameter. The architect ship fired a single beam of pale blue light. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the moon began to fold inward on itself, space twisted like cloth being wrung out. The moon did not explode. It inverted, turning inside out, as reality itself was manipulated. Within 30 seconds, the moon was gone, replaced by a point of twisted space-time that slowly unraveled into nothing. The human observers watched in horror. This was not a weapon. This was power beyond comprehension. Jiwan's voice came over the communication channel. This is what we can do. This is the gap between your technology and ours. Accept our guidance, or we will be forced to use this power to maintain quarantine. We do not wish to destroy. We wish to protect. But we will do what we must. The transmission ended, leaving human space in shocked silence. Governments on Earth called for surrender. The architects had made their point. How could humanity fight against beings who could destroy moons by rewriting reality? But in the Pacific facility, Taejin was not watching the news. He was watching the recorded data of the architect weapon, playing it back, frame by frame. Hajin stood beside him, her fingers tracing equations in the air. "Do you see it?" Taejin asked. "I see it," Hajin breathed. They folded space-time by creating a dimensional overlap. They forced 2 layers of reality to occupy the same point, and the moon was caught in the collapse. Yuna joined them, understanding dawning on her face. They showed us how their technology works. They thought they were scaring us, but they taught us. Taejin smiled for the first time in weeks. They fold space. We were trying to slip between dimensional layers. But what if we use their principle? What if we fold space the other way, creating a bubble of separate reality? The team worked for 6 days straight. They slept in shifts, ate at their stations, lived and breathed the mathematics of dimensional folding. The architects had spent millions of years developing this technology. Humanity had 6 days to understand it through pure observation. On the 7th day, they were ready to test. Doyun received the message from Taejin and immediately understood the risk. If this test failed, if the architects detected it, the quarantine would become absolute. But if it succeeded, everything would change. The test ship was small, barely larger than a fighter craft. It launched from a hidden facility on the dark side of Earth's moon, its fusion drive masked by lunar interference. Yuna had built the dimensional fold drive into its core. It was crude, held together with welds and hope, but the math said it should work. The pilot was a volunteer named Boram, a veteran of the Colony Defense Forces. She sat in the cockpit, hands steady on the controls, despite the fear gnawing at her gut. This was a one-way trip if something went wrong. The fold could collapse with her inside, spreading her atoms across multiple dimensions. Or it could work. "All systems green," Boram reported. "Initiating dimensional fold in 3, 2, 1. The drive activated. For a moment, the ship seemed to blur, its edges becoming undefined. Then, it vanished. Taejin held his breath. Sensors showed nothing. The ship was not in normal space. It was not anywhere their instruments could detect. Then, exactly where they predicted it would emerge, the ship reappeared, not next to the launch point, not in normal space at all. It appeared in a dimensional layer adjacent to reality, visible only through specialized sensors they had built specifically for this test. Boram's voice came through, distorted but triumphant. "I am here. I can see normal space, but I am not in it. The readings show I am 0.00 three-dimensional layers removed from baseline reality." Taejin wanted to cheer but kept his voice professional. "Testing now." There was a pause, then excitement filled Boram's voice. "Yes, movement is possible. And Captain, you are not going to believe this. The energy requirements are minimal. It is like flying in vacuum, with no resistance at all." The implications crashed over them like a wave. Humanity could expand into dimensional space, infinite territory with no borders, no architect quarantine, no limits. And the architects, for all their millions of years of advancement, had never thought to use their technology this way. They had used dimensional folding as a weapon. Humans had turned it into a door. Doyun sent an encrypted message to Earth, command, to every colony, to every ship in human space. We have found the way forward. We are no longer caged. In his monitoring station, Hyun detected the test. He saw the dimensional signature, and his hands began to shake. The humans had done in days what took the architects millennia. They had not just copied architect technology. They had improved it, found new applications, pushed it in directions the architects never imagined. He sent an urgent message to Jiwon. They have achieved dimensional travel. The demonstration failed. We did not scare them. We educated them. Jiwon's response was a single word: war. The first human dimensional colony opened 6 months after Borum's successful test. They called it Haven, a city of 50,000 people living in a layer of reality parallel to normal space. From normal space, the colony was invisible. From Haven, normal space appeared like a ghost world. Visible, but intangible. The architects were horrified. Their carefully maintained quarantine had become meaningless. Humans were expanding in directions the architects could not block without destroying the dimensional fabric itself. And that would harm everyone, including the architects. Commander Jiwon called an emergency council. The assembly was tense, divided. Hyun and his supporters argued for negotiation. Jiwon's hardliners demanded action. The debate raged for days while humanity continued building new dimensional colonies at an alarming rate. They are out of control, Jiwon declared. Every week they establish new settlements. Every week they learn more. Soon they will be beyond our ability to contain it all. Hyun stood to speak. Perhaps that is acceptable. Perhaps we were wrong to try containing them in the first place. The council chamber fell silent. To question the fundamental mission of the architects was near heresy. But Hyun continued. For 4 million years, we have guided younger species. We have controlled their development. We tell ourselves this is for their protection. But look at the result. The galaxy is filled with species that never exceed the limits we set. They are safe, yes, but they are also stagnant. None of them will ever reach our level because we never allow them to face the challenges we faced. An elder named Sujin spoke up. We faced those challenges and nearly destroyed ourselves. We are preventing others from making our mistakes. Are we? Hyun challenged. Or are we preventing them from making our achievements? We survived our crisis. We evolved through it. The humans are doing the same thing. They face extinction and they innovate. They hit barriers and they find new paths. Just like we once did. Mireille, who had been silent until now, stood beside Hyun. I have studied human culture deeply. I have watched their history, their art, their philosophy. They have a concept they call progress through diversity. Where we sought stability through uniformity, they seek advancement through chaos. Millions of different ideas competing, most failing, but the successful ones changing everything. Jiwon's expression was hard. And you think this chaos is good? You think unpredictability is strength? I think it is evolution, Mireille replied. Real evolution, not the controlled development we have enforced. The humans are showing us what we have forgotten. Growth requires risk, but Jiwon would not be swayed. She had supporters, architects, who had spent millions of years believing in the doctrine of controlled development. To admit they were wrong would be to admit their entire civilization had wasted eons enforcing unnecessary limits. On Earth, researcher Kyung-min was making discoveries of her own. She studied human history, not as technology advancement, but as civilizational evolution. She tracked patterns of crisis and response, collapse and rebuilding, near extinction and explosive growth. She presented her findings to Governor Sunhee in a secure conference room. Every major leap in human development follows a near-death experience, Kyungmin explained, displaying historical data. The Black Death killed a third of Europe, and the Renaissance followed. World War II nearly destroyed the world, and the post-war era saw unprecedented cooperation and technological growth. The climate crisis of the 21st century pushed us to develop clean energy decades ahead of schedule. Sun-hee studied the graphs. You are saying we learn from almost dying? More than learn, we transform. Each crisis forces us to adapt or perish. We adapt every time, and we come out stronger. It is evolution on a civilizational scale, compressed into centuries instead of millennia. The architects see this as recklessness, Sun-hee observed. It is recklessness, Kyungmin agreed. But it is also why we are here, expanding into dimensional space while species millions of years older watch from the sidelines. They chose safety. We chose risk. Both strategies work, but they lead to very different places. The breakthrough in understanding came too late to prevent conflict. Jiwan's hardliner faction launched an attack on the human dimensional colonies, using space-time weapons to collapse the dimensional layers where humans had settled. 3 colonies winked out of existence in an instant, taking 15,000 people with them. Doyun's response was immediate. The human defense fleet, now equipped with dimensional drives, engaged the architect forces in a battle that spanned multiple layers of reality. Ships phased in and out of normal space, firing weapons that bent space-time itself. But the humans were outmatched. Architect technology was still millions of years more advanced. For every architect ship destroyed, humanity lost 10. The battle was not going well. Then Borum, now commanding a squadron of dimensional fighters, noticed something. Every time the architects used their space-time weapons, human sensors recorded the energy signatures. The data was automatically transmitted to research facilities on Earth and the remaining colonies. She opened a channel to Taejin. "Doctor, are you recording these weapon signatures?" "Everyone," Taejin replied. "Because every time they shoot at us, we learn how their weapons work. This is not a battle. This is a teaching session." Taejin understood immediately. He opened channels to every human vessel in the combat zone. "All ships, new orders. Engage for learning, not winning. Make them use different weapons. Force them to show us everything they have." Doyun realized what Taejin was asking. It meant taking more damage, risking more lives. But it also meant gathering data that could change the course of the war. He gave the order. Human ships began deliberately provoking the architects, exposing themselves to different weapon systems, recording every energy signature, every space-time manipulation, every technological trick the architects employed. It was a desperate gambit, trading lives for knowledge, but it worked. Within a week, human scientists had reverse-engineered 3 new architect weapon systems. Within a month, they had developed countermeasures. Within 3 months, human technology had advanced centuries in equivalent development time. Hyun watched the human adaptation with awe and terror. They were not just defending themselves. They were evolving in real time, using combat as a crucible for advancement. Every engagement made them stronger, smarter, more capable. He sent a message to Jiwan. "We need to stop this war. Every day we fight them, we make them more dangerous. They are learning from us, faster than we can adapt." But Jiwan had committed to her path. She authorized the use of the architect's ultimate weapon, the dimensional collapse device. It was a weapon that could destroy entire regions of space, collapsing all dimensional layers into a single point of infinite density. Using it would kill millions, possibly billions, but it would end the human threat forever. Mireille learned of the plan and made a choice that would define her. She sent a coded message to Sun-hee, warning her of the weapon and its deployment schedule. It was treason against her own people, but Mireille had come to believe that the architects were wrong. Humanity deserved its chance to grow, even if that growth was chaotic and dangerous. Sun He received the warning and immediately contacted every human leader. They had 72 hours before the architects deployed their ultimate weapon. 72 hours to find a solution or face extinction. In his laboratory, Taejin stared at the data Mirai had provided on the dimensional collapse device. It was devastating. Reality-ending technology. But like the space-time weapons before it, it was also a teacher. Its operating principles were laid bare in Mirai's intelligence report. Hajin saw the same thing he did. If we can generate a dimensional collapse, we can prevent one. The math works both ways. 1. Yuna was already designing the countermeasure system. We will need to deploy field generators around every colony. The power requirements are insane, but it is possible. They had 3 days to build and deploy a defensive system that could counter a weapon 4 million years in development. It should have been impossible. But humanity had proven that impossible was just another barrier to overcome. The clock was ticking. The dimensional collapse weapon was ready. Ji-won stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the countdown timer. In 40 minutes, the weapon would fire. Every human dimensional colony would collapse into nothingness. It would be the largest loss of life the galaxy had seen in 1,000,000 years. But Ji-won believed it was necessary. The humans had to be stopped before they endangered everyone. Hyun made one last attempt to change her mind. Commander, please reconsider. There are other options. Negotiation? Compromise? Shared development? We tried containment. They ignored it. We offered guidance. They refused. What option remains? Ji-won's voice was cold. Though, final, partnership, Hyun said quietly. That is the option you refuse to consider. Partnership requires equals. Humanity is not our equal. Not yet, Hyun agreed. But they will be. Soon. Maybe they already are, in ways we refuse to see. Ji-won turned away, ending the conversation. The countdown continued. On Haven Colony, Taejin and his team worked with frantic speed. The defensive field generators were in place around every human settlement, but they were untested. Theory said they should work. Mathematics supported the design, but nobody had ever stopped a dimensional collapse weapon before. Yuna made the final connection on the primary generator, sweat dripping down her face. That is the last one. All systems are online. Hajin monitored the power feeds. The generators were consuming the entire output of 3 fusion reactors. If this works, we will have just enough power to maintain the fields for approximately 4 minutes. After that, the reactors will overload. 4 minutes should be enough, Taejin said, hoping he was right. Either the fields hold or they do not. We will know quickly. Soon he addressed the colony population over the emergency channel. In 10 minutes, the architects will fire their weapon. Our scientists have built defenses. They believe the defenses will work. I believe in our scientists. But I want you all to know, whatever happens, humanity chose freedom. We chose to grow, to explore, to become more than we were. That choice has value, even if it ends here. Doyun's fleet had withdrawn to a safe distance, unable to interfere with the weapon deployment. He watched his tactical display, feeling helpless. His ships could fight, but they could not stop a weapon that rewrote reality itself. Borum's voice came over the command channel. Sir, I have an idea. It is probably crazy. Crazy seems to work for us, Doyun replied. What is it? The weapon collapses dimensions by forcing them to occupy the same point. What if we phase shift our ships into multiple dimensional layers simultaneously? We would be in several places at once. Maybe the weapon cannot collapse us if we are spread across dimensions. It was insane. It should not work. The human ships were not designed for multi-dimensional occupation. But neither were they designed for most of the things humanity had done in the last year. Do it, Doyun ordered. All ships, execute Borum's maneuver on my mark. The countdown reached 0. Ji-won gave the order. The dimensional collapse weapon fired, sending a pulse of twisted space-time toward the human colonies. Reality began to fold. dimensions crushing together with force that should have destroyed everything in its path. Then Taejin's defensive fields activated. They did not stop the collapse. Instead, they created pockets of stable space-time, bubbles where dimensions could not merge. The human colonies existed within these bubbles, protected from the weapon's effects. The collapse wave hit and broke around the defensive fields like water around rocks. The fields held for 10 seconds, 20, 30. The generators screamed with the strain, but they held. After 90 seconds, the weapon pulse dissipated, its energy exhausted against defenses that should not have existed. On the Architect flagship, Jiwon stared in disbelief. Impossible. They have had this technology for less than a year. We perfected the dimensional collapse weapon over 10 million years. How did they defend against it? The answer came from Mireille, who had been monitoring from her quarters. Because we taught them. Every weapon we used, every demonstration we gave, every threat we made, we showed them how our technology works. They learned from us. They learned from fighting us. Commander, we have been educating them while trying to destroy them. Jiwon's certainty cracked. She had been so focused on containing humanity that she had not seen the pattern. The harder the architects pushed, the faster humanity advanced. Every obstacle became a lesson. Every attack became a blueprint. Hyun's voice came over the communication system. Commander, we need to call for negotiations. Now. Before this escalates further. But Jiwon's hardliners were not finished. If the dimensional collapse weapon failed, they would use conventional weapons. Thousands of them. They would burn every human colony from normal space, regardless of cost. The orders went out. Architect vessels began moving into attack positions around Earth, Haven, and every human settlement. Then something unexpected happened. Kyungmin activated a device she had been building in secret for months. It was not a weapon. It was a transmission system. But unlike any that had existed before, it did not send words or images. It sent pure experience. Every architect in communication range suddenly found themselves experiencing human history, not reading about it, living it. They felt the desperation of the Black Death, the horror of world wars, the fear of nuclear annihilation. They experienced humanity's art, music, literature. They felt human hope, human love, human determination to survive against impossible odds. For the architects, who had lived in stability for millions of years, it was overwhelming. They had forgotten what it meant to struggle, to risk, to reach for more, despite the danger. They had been safe for so long that they had forgotten what it meant to truly live. Soo-jin, the architect elder, was the first to speak after the transmission ended. I remember now. I remember when we were like them. Before we became afraid. Before we chose stagnation over growth. Other architects echoed her sentiment. The transmission had done what arguments could not. It had made them remember their own history, their own evolution, their own desperate climb from primitive beginnings to galactic civilization. They had been young once. They had been reckless once. And that recklessness had made them what they were. Jiwon stood alone on her bridge, feeling the support of her hardliners crumble. She had lost. Not through military defeat, but through something more profound. The humans had shown the architects their own reflection, and the architects did not like what they had become. She opened a channel to Sun-hee. Governor, this is Commander Jiwon of the Architects. I am requesting negotiations. Unconditional. We have much to discuss. The summit was held on neutral ground. A space station built jointly by both species in the weeks following the ceasefire. Jiwon, Hyun, and Mirai represented the architects. Sun-hee, Doyun, and Taejin represented humanity. We were wrong, Jiwon began, the words clearly painful for her. We spent 4 million years trying to prevent other species from making our mistakes, but in doing so, we prevented them from making our achievements. We created a galaxy of children who would never grow up, Because we never let them face real challenges. Sun-Hee nodded. And we nearly destroyed ourselves several times being reckless. Both approaches have costs. Perhaps together we can find a balance, Hyun suggested. Human innovation combined with architect wisdom. Your ability to adapt quickly with our ability to plan for the long term. Mireille added. We have technologies. You do not. But you have perspectives we have lost. Your diversity of thought. Your cultural variation. Your acceptance of chaos as a creative force. These are things we abandoned in our pursuit of stability. Taejin leaned forward. What are you proposing? Partnership, Jiwon said. Real partnership. Not guidance. Not control. Collaboration between equals. 2. We are not your equals, Doyun pointed out. You have millions of years of advancement on us. In some ways, Jiwon agreed. But you have proven you can learn quickly. And you have already taught us things we had forgotten. Like courage, like the willingness to risk everything for a chance at something better. The negotiations took weeks, but a framework emerged. The architects would share their scientific knowledge freely. Humanity would share their innovative approaches and adaptive methodologies. Joint research stations would be established. Cultural exchanges would begin. The galaxy's quarantine zones would be re-evaluated. Other species would be given the choice to develop under architect guidance or to forge their own paths with human and architect support available, but not mandatory. The first joint mission launched 6 months later, a combined human-architect expedition to explore a region of space both civilizations had deemed too dangerous for millennia. The expedition included Hyun as chief scientist, Mireille as cultural liaison, Doyun as military commander, and Taejin as lead researcher. On the bridge of their ship, Hyun looked at his human colleagues. 4 million years ago, my people nearly destroyed themselves, reaching for advancement too quickly. We survived by becoming cautious. You nearly destroyed yourselves multiple times and survived by becoming more innovative. Perhaps both strategies have merit, Taejin smiled. Or perhaps the best strategy is having both. Caution when needed, boldness when required, ancient wisdom and young energy working together. That is a very human idea, Hyun observed. It is becoming an architect idea too, Mireille replied. You are evolving again. We all are. Together. Soon he watched from Earth as the joint expedition ship entered a dimensional fold and vanished from normal space, heading toward unknown territories. She thought about fear and growth, about safety and risk, about the choice to remain stagnant or to keep climbing even when the path was dangerous. Her final log entry reflected on the irony that had brought two civilizations together. The architects feared our rapid evolution. They tried to stop us, to contain us, to slow us down. They're inclapting everyone, but in confronting us, they were forced to evolve themselves. They remembered what they had been before fear made them overseers instead of explorers. We did not conquer them. We reminded them who they used to be. And perhaps in return, they reminded us that wisdom has value too. Growth without direction is chaos, but direction without growth is death. Together, we might finally have both. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy through force. They had transformed it by refusing to stop being human. Chaotic, creative, reckless, brilliant, and ceaselessly evolving. And in doing so, they had given the oldest civilization in the galaxy the greatest gift possible.